think of it as compounding consistencies. Like, what can I manage daily? Like, I don't want to be remarkable, 4 times a year. I want to be consistently unremarkable so that at the end of a year, I'm very remarkable because I've touched so many different people and I've added so much value.
Eric, thank you for taking the time to sit with me today. I would love to jump into your journey starting before you got into brands and Kona and everything else that you have jumped into and really just have blown up on social media and just done some profound things when it comes to endurance athletes. When you were early on, I know we both are in upstate New York, or at least you were in upstate New York. What were some of the early moments that kind of shaped you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of why I enjoy hosting and building community is I grew up as an only child in a really small town, Pulaski, New York. I graduated with, I think, 90 kids. I grew up snowmobiling, salmon fishing, very, country upbringing. And I always had friends over to play ping pong in my parents' basement and basketball in my parents' backyard. And I loved leaving people with a memory, just a memorable experience. And then in college, I went to SUNY Geneseo in Rochester, New York, and I loved hosting huge parties. I loved leaving people with this memory of that was an epic party. And then after college, kind of the same thing in my early and mid 20s. And then by my late 20s, I phased out of consuming alcohol and partying, and I got really into health and wellness, specifically triathlon. And triathlon changed my life to the trajectory that I'm on now. That taught me so much about how exercise is linked to mental well-being, emotional well-being, obviously physical well-being. And I wanted others to experience that same feeling that I experienced through triathlon. I wanted others to, realize their full potential. And for me, a lot of that was based around all of the, exercise that I was doing, which led to healthier eating habits, healthier sleeping habits, healthier recovery habits. I started bringing people kind of along in the journey with me of training for triathlons and racing Ironmans, and, started building some of the best friendships of my life through wellness and through triathlon and through run clubs and triathlon clubs. So now here in Denver, Colorado, a big part of how we entertain is contrast therapy. When you're riding or running, like, you're not fully present the entire time with others. Obviously, you're getting your exercise into, and there's times when your heart rate is too high to have any kind of conversation with others. So I realized 7 years ago when I first started, going to these communal saunas and communal cold plunges, that they created this container for people to go really deep with each other really fast. You generally don't have your phone with you in the sauna. It's going to overheat. So it breeds captive conversations with others. And, the heat is raising your heart rate, and it is putting you in this fight or flight mode where it's going to narrow your aperture. So you're super focused. And, there's also something to it. Stimulates mental clarity and vulnerability. So I realized that these sauna conversations and contrast therapy meetings I was having were some of the best conversations and meetings of my life. So that's why we ultimately designed our house here in Denver, Colorado as Muscle Mountain. The outdoor is the backyard is a gym. We have saunas and cold plunges, and we have people over every single night hosting them. So yeah, I mean, I link what I'm doing now back to just growing up in a small town as an only child and wanting to build community and wanting to have friends and wanting to form deep bonds with others.
I love it, man. You've created a life that is surrounded by, it seems as though, prioritizing health and wellness before anything else, and that's kind of like it's sacred for you. I know the boundaries that you have are a big part of that as well. I know that when it came to triathlons, you had no really intention into going into it. You saw friends getting into it. You thought it was a cool bike, and then you just jumped into it. What is it about triathlons and endurance athletes and just those kind of things, whether it's Ironmans or whatever it is, like, what is it about those kind of sports that just get you out of bed and just make you want to do it? Because it's a lot of stuff that you hate, I assume, to get to it.
Yeah, progression. And I think you need to stick with something long enough that you see progression. Obviously, the first time you go out and run or ride a mountain bike, like, you're probably going to be pretty frustrated if you're going with others that are really good. You're going to be like, how the hell are you so good and I'm so bad at this? But when you stick with something long enough and you start to see progression within it, I think that's what fuels many of us to continue doing it. Like right now, I'm deep in CrossFit because I'm seeing progression in strength training. And I got to a place in triathlon where in the beginning, it kind of sucked because I couldn't swim and I wasn't running all that fast and I wasn't biking all that fast. But, about a year in, I started seeing, this curve of progression. And that really fueled the journey from doing a sprint distance triathlon to an Olympic distance triathlon to a half Ironman, telling my girlfriend at the time that I would never do that again after that first half Ironman. And then 30 minutes later, signing up for a full Ironman the next year, doing that first full Ironman, not being able to walk for a week, and then wanting to qualify for Kona. And it was just this, curve of progression. But then I got to a point where the progression wasn't very much anymore. And, to eke out just a little bit, I had to do so much more. And I lost my passion for it because it was so hard to continue progressing. So then I started as kind of a rookie again in CrossFit. And, now I'm at this place about 5 years into seriously training for CrossFit where I'm still seeing progression. It's slowing down, but I've gotten to a very high level at CrossFit. And just like I got to the World Championships in Ironman, I want to get to the CrossFit Games in CrossFit. So I think there's this blend of progression, this goal kind of at the end of the tunnel. And once we reach a world-class goal, we understand the formula to reach another world-class goal. So I like having those goals like off in the distance. So I'm training for something. But I think many give up before they get to that point of really seeing progression because it is frustrating. Your first 6 months, if you're a weightlifter and you start running, like you're going to be really frustrated with it. And if you're a weightlifter or the high level CrossFit athlete that doesn't run much and you want to do your first marathon, you're going to be frustrated for the first 6 months because you've taken something really far in one capacity, but you've probably neglected some other capacities because you were so singularly focused on that one thing. But yeah, give it 6 months. That's a big thing I preach is like doing something long enough that you can start to see that progression and you can get into a flow state with it.
I think there's a lot of invisible progress when it comes to that. At least that's the kind of framing I like to see it is like you don't notice that you're progressing. I know when you first got started, you hired a coach that was you kind of aesthetically looked better then, so it was kind of weird to see him progressing faster and in the longer races and everything. You had to slow down to speed up was kind of like the mentality that you took on from him. How was it kind of fighting your ego during that time and kind of allowing yourself to slow down? Because I think for anyone, especially getting into running, it is the most difficult thing is like just telling yourself like you have to slow down, it, but then you still just push yourself harder anyway.
Yeah, I mean, endurance is all about durability and an aerobic engine. It's not really about fitness. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I would consider myself to be very fit right now because I'm strong, I'm anaerobically fit. I could run a mile pretty fast, but I don't have the same durability and aerobic engine that I had during the Ironman years. And those are very specific to compounding consistencies. If you want to be good at Ironman, if you want to be good at marathon, ultra marathon, it really comes down to volume. And in order to put in that type of volume, you need to back off on the pace. So my story is I was running most of my runs before triathlon, just before triathlon, at like a 650 to 720 pace. And I could only run about 5 or 6 miles at that pace because I was going at a very high heart rate. I was going at like a 160 to 170 heart rate with my max heart rate at that time being about 180. So they were all hard efforts. And I was coming from a CrossFit type training background. I had a personal trainer 2007 to 2010. And my personal trainer had me doing CrossFit type workouts before I even knew CrossFit was a thing. So, going into triathlon, I'm like, okay, I just got to go hard. Every effort is hard. That's how I've progressed in the gym. So that's how I'll progress in triathlon. And after about a year and a half of doing these sprint triathlons every Wednesday night that I was winning towards the end of that 1.5 year period, this guy, Mike Corona, would beat me in any like Olympic distance or half Ironman races. And, at that time I had a 6-pack, like I was pretty ripped by 30, 31, from doing these, weightlifting and CrossFit type workouts. And he didn't look nearly as fit or ripped as I did. And I'm like, how is he beating me? I don't understand. So he's the one who told me that I had to slow down to speed up. And I just couldn't fathom that. I'm like, I'm going so hard all the time. Like, why am I not faster than you? And he's like, because I'm doing more volume and I'm going slower than you. And I'm like, okay. So it took him 3 or 4 months to convince me to slow my running pace down. And at the time, He wanted me to do all of my runs under a 140 heart rate. And that was about an 8:30 pace for me, which didn't feel hard because I was used to running, low 7 pace.
Mm.
So after a few months, finally listened to him because he threatened to fire me if I didn't, and start doing my runs at this 8:30 pace. And sure enough, it allows me to stack volume. Instead of running 30 miles a week, I can run 50 miles a week and 60 miles a week. So I was able to do longer runs, more consistent runs, and I started to build the durability and the aerobic engine I needed to run long distances and not break down. So fast forward 4 years of doing that type of training, I went from an 8:30 pace to about a 6:25 pace for 20 plus miles at a 129 heart rate. And I did very, very little threshold training, very little fast running. The majority of my running, 85 to 90% of my running, was done in that 130 to 140 heart rate zone. And again, it just allowed me to stack miles, build durability, build that aerobic engine, get really efficient with oxygen. And, over time, I got faster at long distances.
Yeah, that's absurd at that heart rate and for that long. And it's amazing to see because I'm being inspired by you and so many other people in Austin that I connect with and I've had on the show and that are getting into running. And it seems like it's such a sport that just ignites something inside of so many people that is it's unexplainable, to be honest. Where do you find for people wanting to get into endurance athletes? Is there a good place to start?
I mean, in Austin, there's so many amazing run
Of course.
clubs that you can
Yeah.
join. So find a group of people doing something that you want to do and join them. That would be my advice if you're in a city like Austin. If you're not in a city like Austin, I mean, a personal trainer helped me a ton, whether it's a personal trainer, a run coach, just someone who has the knowledge you need to be able to train effectively. And also accountability is huge. I mean, I needed the accountability of that personal trainer. Otherwise, I wasn't going to go to the gym at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning and hit that hard of a workout. And still to date, like I have my backyard's a gym, but I go to a CrossFit gym because I want to be pushed by others. I want to be in the mix. I want to have that energy around me of others pushing me. So I think, the community aspect of it or having accountability is super important. And then structure is another key piece to it. Like every single day, I have 8:30 until 10:30 time blocked for training. That's when I'm doing my first workout. And then generally I block off about an hour or 90 minutes in the afternoon to do something aerobic. So make sure you time block it into your schedule so that, it's just on autopilot. Like you do that every single day. And then having some kind of obstacle, event, race, goal that you want to meet. I'm doing Leadville this year. I put that in my calendar every year because, it forces me to backtrack my way into overcoming this long mountain bike race. The CrossFit Games is something I have on my radar this year that I've been training for the last few years. In the Ironman years, I obviously had half Ironmans and full Ironmans on my calendar that I was prepping for. So I think having a progression-based goal is huge as well. But yeah, hire a coach or hire a personal trainer and just find someone who has the knowledge to help you get to where you want to go. And also they'll provide that accountability.
Yeah, I find coaching is a cheat code in every aspect. It's the only like logical cheat code that you can have because someone's done it before you and it's just giving you kind of direction for it. Before you even got into Ironmans and triathlons and everything, you were in insurance from your father, right? So what did that kind of teach you about business and kind of like resorting that into triathlons and kind of pushing yourself? Because there's the mental aspect and then there's also the physical aspect. How did those kind of relate?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I always wanted to lead people. I always wanted to create my own destiny. I watched my father manage people. My mom was a school teacher, very
Mm.
hard worker. So I grew up in a very hardworking family and watching both of my parents just kind of be leaders. And I knew that I wanted to be a leader. And from a young age too, I knew that I wanted to create my own destiny with business. And, I fell into that with sport as well. I played team sports in high school, which obviously with team sports, they're very reliant upon the others that are around you. And in college, that's when I got into weightlifting and I enjoyed that I controlled my destiny with the weightlifting. Like I could see the direct results of lifting heavy weights. I could see the performance benefits of lifting weights. So I enjoyed that. And I think those things really triggered me to be like, okay, with business, I want to do the same thing. I want to be able to control my own destiny. So when I graduated college, the day after, I was enrolled in a property and casualty insurance agency course to get my property and casualty insurance license. 3 weeks later, my dad gave me a company car and a small salary and basically set me off on my own to build my own insurance agency. And, for about a year and a half, I was just kind of spinning my wheels, pun intended. I was driving 50,000 miles a year with a suit and tie on at 21 years old, going door to door, trying to sell insurance to businesses. And about a year and a half in, I found my way with it. I realized that focusing on one niche was the way to go. And I landed on campgrounds and marinas. And I just like laser focused on just becoming an expert in campground insurance and marina insurance. And I wanted to be known as the thought leader in that space. So for 7 years, I built an insurance business of literally going door to door and selling insurance to campgrounds and marinas. And obviously over time, I became name dropped, and it got a lot easier to find new clients through, the pipeline of others sharing their experience with me. And I've used that time and time again with business. Like I always tell people to go narrow and deep in whatever they're doing, especially when you're first starting out. Like figure out really good product market fit, saturate that space, and then move on to the next. But don't try to be everything to everyone.
Yeah, one thing I've heard you say a lot of is building an asset. It's like for the insurance business, it's like so many people are going into business trading time for money, but that's not really business. You're kind of working in the business instead of on the business. How were you able to, what was it around that year and a half mark, other than kind of finding your niche that allowed you to kind of stop trading time for money? Because it seems like you've done that with brands as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the insurance business is great in that you're building residual income. So there's, quite a bit of time up front to get the client, but then it's a lot less time down the road to service the client, and you continue getting paid the same amount of commission each year. So,
Mhm.
that's just kind of building blocks where each year you're incrementally increasing your residual income without having to put in a lot of the work that you did when you first sold the policy to the client. And it's an asset, it's something that eventually I still own the business. It's something I can eventually sell down the road. So, I built this asset that is sellable. Um, and then, I mean, now I am trading time for money in a way, but I'm doing exactly what I want every single day.
Yeah.
I'm not working a desk job 9 to 5, coming home and complaining to my girlfriend how much I hate my job. Like, I love what I do every single day. I'm working out, I'm outside, I'm mountain biking, and I'm creating content for founders of brands that I really, really want to see thrive. They've become friends, and I love their products and services. They're all in the wellness space. So, I do preach that if you are trading time for money, make sure it aligns with what exactly how you want your life to be. I have these other things that provide residual income for making investments that are passive income. And then, my current trading time for money business is that. But with it, I've built a following on social media, which has become an asset that allows me to have this funnel of deal flow. It allows me to, have lots of new investment opportunities. It allows me to easily meet new people. It's just this opportunity, generation tool. So, if I'm 21 again, I would tell someone at 21, being in my shoes now, like build a personal brand. It's probably the most beneficial thing that you can do right now is having your own personal brand, because you're going to be able to leverage that in so many ways down the road.
I'm right with you. I got started my personal brand at 17, and I would not be speaking with you or any of the people I speak to on the podcast for that reason. It's everything in the way that society's moving. But originally weren't kind of building your personal brand. You had a software business, a restaurant business, a gym business. What were some of the early lessons you learned from those businesses, where they worked out or they didn't?
Yeah, I mean, the insurance business worked out great. The gym did not work out. I lost a lot of money on the gym. I've kind of realized the sexier the business and the more public facing the business, oftentimes the more competitive it's going to be. And
Yeah.
everyone wants to get into it because, it looks like this fun thing to do. But, with more people getting into it, that means it's going to be very, very competitive. People are the hardest part of any business. If you're building a people dependent business, that's really hard. It doesn't scale nearly as well as, let's say like a software as a service business,
Hmm.
where you can build one thing and sell to many and you don't need a massive team to do it. Gyms, restaurants, they're very capital intensive. They're very people dependent. The restaurants did well. The restaurants I did make out well with. We built a fast casual restaurant. So we eliminated some of the people dependency in that, you know, it wasn't chef reliant. It wasn't relying upon an incredible wait staff. It was just, you know, you go through a line, you build your bowl, you check out at the end. So, you know, you need some friendly bodies there, but, you know, you don't need someone with high skill. I mean, oftentimes with these gyms or restaurant concepts, you know, if the face of that business leaves, or the person who has like the secret sauce, if they leave, a lot of your customers are going to leave, and it's going to be hard to replace that person. So, yeah, with every venture I get into, I look at how well can it scale without having it to be dependent on very specific people. I really like feeling-based businesses, something where, you know, you feel it immediately, like Ice Barrel, you feel that
Mhm.
immediately. Like you're going to get hooked on that because you feel so good afterwards. I like subscription-based businesses. Beam Dream. Beam is a company I'm an investor in. Their sleep supplement is something I take every single night because it allows me to sleep a lot better. So I associate better sleeping with taking Beam. So I
Right.
look at that. And then, you know, as far as investing in brands, like I like investing in people that have done it before. So, you know, generally I'm looking for people that have done it once and they're just building the next mousetrap. They kind of know the formula. Um, you know, it's generally the founder is super important in how well are they connected, what unique knowledge do they have to scale the business, and then as far as the numbers that I'm looking at, you know, what are customer acquisition costs, what is the long-term value of the client. Those are two of the big things that I'm looking at in investing in companies.
Yeah, I want to dive into your thought process while working with companies, and like the thought process when you're building your brand as well, and like working with brands. But I also want to talk on one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, and it's chasing the public perception of success. You did this in your early 20s. With Ironman, it was like that burnt you out as well. How were you able to overcome that? What were some of the things that you implemented in your life to kind of reframe what you prioritized as and valued even?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt so much more fulfilled after a long run and after a long bike ride. So it was during those years, 2010 to 2014, where I had a lot of time alone in nature with my heart rate elevated, that I kind of consider my psychedelic experience, where
Yeah.
I just had this clarity around how I wanted to live my life, because I felt so much more fulfilled after those training sessions than I did in, you know, onboarding a new customer and making some more money and buying a new suit or buying a new car. So I'm like, why am I so focused on just chasing revenue and, you know, buying more things when I feel like the best version of myself after I go for a run and after I'm in nature? So I just started building my life more around those things with no intention of ever monetizing it. I had no
Mm.
clue, you know, in all of those years where I was really designing my life, how I live today, that I would be able to monetize it. It wasn't until 2016, 2017, you know, 7 years of just doing exactly what I wanted and feeling fulfilled, that I started monetizing it. And it wasn't something I ever chased. You know, brands started messaging me, offering to send product to me. And I'm like, yeah, sounds cool. I would love a pair of Oakleys. And oh my God, yeah, send me some nut butter. I love nut butter. I'd be happy to like post a recipe using this. And then, you know, I realized that I was adding significant value for these brands and creating content for them and the introductions I was making. And, you know, when there's value involved, you can monetize that. So over time, I realized that I could build a business around doing exactly what I wanted to do and living my life the way I want to live. So, you know, I feel fulfilled every single day because I have the freedom and flexibility to spend much of my day exercising, recovering, being around the types of people I want to be around. And then I'm able to help brands and founders who I really enjoy helping build their businesses and, you know, able to monetize a portion of that.
Yeah, yeah. The even though you're trading time for money, it's like you're doing, like you said, you would be doing this anyways. And that's like where a lot of people, that's the direction people want to go in. 2016, 2015, you were leaving Ironmans. It's almost like leaving, like if you're playing a professional sport of some sort. I mean, you are, but it's like you leave that, and then your identity is kind of like, who am I at this point? What was that experience like, and how did you kind of gauge where you wanted to go and who you wanted to be and that whole thing? Because I could assume that was really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a pro athlete having to transition away from the fame. You know, it's not
Yeah.
like I had fame. I, you know, I had become notable in my small city of Syracuse, New York, as this elite Ironman athlete, and you know, I certainly had this pressure to continue living up to it. You know, I felt
Mhm.
like, all of these people in this small city were rooting for me to get to the world championships and to perform every year and to post these fast Ironman times. And, I know it inspired a lot of people, and that also was kind of a heavy weight on me.
Yeah.
But, ultimately I got to that that side of the progression curve where I wasn't really progressing anymore. And at that point I was training 20, 25 hours a week. I had sacrificed so much during those years to get to the world championships, travel, doing fun things, going out to late dinners, having a glass of wine, friend group, like so much was sacrificed. And I just didn't feel fulfilled, and I wasn't stoked in the morning to hit, my long ride or my long run that day. And I started bagging races. Like I was signed up for some half Ironmans, and, a week before I'm like, I don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to do it. And at that point I was like, okay, I gotta switch chapters and start writing a new chapter. This one is no longer serving me. But yeah, it was certainly hard, like stepping away from Ironman. I still kind of had one foot in. I was still biking a lot, running a lot. And then I tried to go right into being this elite CrossFit athlete. At the time, I owned the CrossFit gym. So, I had this place where I could train all day. And I was literally training 3 to 5 hours a day doing CrossFit, thinking the more CrossFit Metcons I did, the better I would get at it. I could outwork everybody and just do more Metcons. And, kind of the same lesson I learned in Ironman is that I tried to go too fast. I didn't build a foundation. I didn't build the movement patterns. I didn't have the strength necessary. And I kept getting hurt for 2 years. I tore my MCL. My shoulders were always bothering me. Like I was always working around something. Something always was tweaked. So, during that 2-year time period, it was tough for me. I felt like I had lost my identity in Ironman. I realized that I couldn't just be this elite CrossFit athlete and fall into, competing in the CrossFit Games. And around that same time, my social media following was growing, and more people were messaging me, inspired by, my story and my dedication to all of the training and my diet and recovery. And, during that time period, that's when I recognized, like, I really enjoy just inspiring other people. Like, I don't need to be this elite athlete. I can just feel good day in and day out. I can be really fulfilled. I can share my story and I'll feel good, and I'm helping others feel good. So, that's ultimately how I shifted my mindset from, I'm an elite athlete to I want to do what I enjoy every single day. I want to be the best version of myself, and I want to share much of that with an audience so that they can realize their full potential as well.
Yeah, and granted, you still are an elite athlete, so that probably makes it a little bit easier on you. I mean, you're still prioritizing that in your life. Like you said a minute ago, Oakley was the first like kind of aha moment of like this can actually be an opportunity moving forward. What do you think it is that allows brands to want to work with someone? Like, what do you think attracted them to work with you, and how have you been able to evolve for someone maybe wanting to get started and working with brands?
Yeah, 3 key letters, ROI, return on investment. I think too many people with this big number next to their name, they just associate that with I'm valuable, I'm going to charge you this because I have this number next to my name.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, every good relationship is based on return on investment if someone is paying you for something. I don't care how good of friends you are with someone or how big that number is next to your name. If you're not providing some kind of return on that person's time or monetary investment, then the relationship probably isn't going to be long term. So that's what I would recommend, is figure out how can you provide the most return on investment for the brands that you want to work with. So, that means becoming a thought leader in a certain space. That means having really good product market fit. You're not going to see me promoting a brand that generally isn't in the wellness space. Like, I know what extensions of me are, and those are the types of brands I want to work with that are just kind of extensions of how I live my life. And I've created all of these other services in the background that, you don't see as the number next to my name that add significant value for brands. So, raising money for brands, investing in brands, helping build brand ambassador programs, having a newsletter, having all sorts of third-party service providers that I know are really good, knowing who the best influencers are, who move the needle for other brands, and making those introductions, hosting these founders-only events where I connect founders with founders. Behind the scenes, I'm playing matchmaker. I'm just making connections all day long. And also, like, we host people at the house all the time. We have a whole product seating area at the house. We have 6 to 10 people that come over every single night, generally different people, to do contrast therapy. So, again, I think of it as compounding consistencies. Like, what can I manage daily? Like, I don't want to be remarkable, 4 times a year. I want to be consistently unremarkable so that at the end of a year, I'm very remarkable because I've touched so many different people and I've added so much value. So that's really how I think of it, is just what are all of these different compounding things I can do to add significant value for the brands that I'm working with.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, the more that you do it, the more it compounds. And that idea of 6 to 10 people overnight, that you call like multitasking without multitasking, right? I love that mindset. I think a lot of people struggle with community. Maybe they don't live in a city where they can go to a CrossFit gym or something like that. How did you get started? Of course, you were already collaborating with all of the different things that you were already doing, but how can someone get started in being able to build up that kind of community?
Yeah, I mean, add value. So figure out a space where you want to be a thought leader, or figure out a theme. Maybe you're funny and you want to roll with being funny, and you can do these cool meme account or meme videos. Or just learn as much as you can about a certain topic, and go narrow and deep on it and be known for that certain topic. That's going to help you build an audience. And then on the brand side, just start adding value for brands. Like early on, I was, the brands whose products and services I was using, I was creating content for them. I would DM them content and be like, hey, feel free to use this. I would tag all of these brands, shoes I was wearing and apparel I was wearing when I was working out, bikes I was using. So it was just like showing that I love their products and services and that I wanted to add value. And, as I started working with more brands reached out. So it becomes this snowball effect. And I learned this again in the insurance years, where the more campgrounds I insured, the more campgrounds came to me because I was being name dropped. And that's what it's become now, is I've worked with so many brands that, I get name dropped a lot to new brands. So the more brands you work with, just know more brands are going to reach out because they're going to see that you must be doing something right for all of those other brands you're working with.
Yeah, that's a great problem to have. And I could assume that the more brands come to you, the harder it is to say no, because the more opportunities that you have, you don't want to spread yourself too thin, because you have to actually you want to provide value. As you said, the ROI is what matters most. What do you notice within, because it seems like you come with brands early on and you really want to get to know the founder. What is it about the founders that really makes you resonate with the person? Do they have a really big vision, or like what is it that makes you inclined to work with them versus others?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like seamless energy, where it's easy to be with them. I love adding value. I love receiving value. So making sure
Mhm.
that the sum is greater than the parts. Like, are we both able to add significant value to each other's lives? I use this fly to Tokyo rule. Like, would I fly to
Yes.
Tokyo with them and be stoked to have a conversation with that person for a 24-hour flight? Um, and, is it within my wheelhouse? Is it something where I feel like my audience is going to be receptive to it? Because again, I want to feel fulfilled with these. And for me
Yeah.
to feel fulfilled, I want to know that I'm moving the needle for these people I'm working with. And that's why I choose to work with these earlier stage wellness companies. That's where I know I have the most ability to move the needle for them. Where, Nike, I love Nike, but am I really going to significantly move the needle for them? Probably not. So I don't feel all that fulfilled working with them. Am I going to have a direct line to Phil Knight? Probably not. So I like feeling fulfilled, and I like relationships over transactions. So I want to be friends with the people I'm working with. I want to feel like it's this incredible relationship. And, I mean, most of the brands that I work with, the founder has come to our house. They've stayed here. We've hit hard workouts together. We've jumped in cold streams. We've sat in hot saunas. And those are the types of people I want to do business with.
Yeah, it probably doesn't make it feel like work at that point, which is another thing, going back to like you may be trading time for money, but you're surrounding yourself with people that give you energy instead of drain it. That's another thing, that you used to write down what would give you energy and drain energy from you, and that really allowed you to kind of pivot to the things that gave you energy. I find that for so many people, it gets to the point where things get so, I want to put in quotations, bad, that they're forced to kind of make a change. What was it around that period of time that like made you pivot and think, okay, really need to think deeper about what's giving me and what's not giving me energy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the taste of flow state. Like, once you taste it, you want it in all aspects of life. And, I got a taste of it with these Wednesday night triathlon clubs where, like, I
Mm.
was just completely in the moment. I felt so fulfilled afterwards. I was energized. I felt like I could be my authentic self. And then, I would go into a board meeting the next day and I'd be like, I'm doodling on a piece of paper, I'm wishing I was doing something else. I'm adding zero value. I feel just kind of energy drained. I'm not moving. I'm not outside in nature. So, I just started making note of all of these things where I was completely in the moment. I felt like I was getting value and giving value. And then I made a list of all of these things where I wasn't present, where my mind was wandering. I was wishing I was with someone else, or I was wishing I was somewhere else or doing something else. And slowly began to build my life around all of these flow state activities and eliminated all of these energy draining non-alignment activities.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff because now you're living a life that it seems to just be giving you energy at all times. I know that the sauna and ice barrel, you've talked a lot about those, and they're just foundations for your day. What are other habits that maybe people wouldn't expect out of you that are foundational in maybe your day, your week, that kind of keep you grounded?
So in the evenings after contrast therapy, I love cooking at home. I have a Yoder smoker that I love smoking meat on. It's another form of community bonding. Like we always have
Yeah.
people that stay over for dinner. So I really enjoy like winding down with that activity. And then I avoid highly stimulating environments late at night. Like you'll rarely catch me going to a late night concert or a comedy club or, things that are really fun. And I certainly do enjoy, but, I really, really enjoy my 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And after 7 p.m., I really want to wind down so that I can get restful sleep. My mind isn't racing at night. And, I can wake up again at 5:30, 6 o'clock the next day and do it all over again. So yeah, just having like a slow evening, a wind down routine is super important to me to make sure that it just kind of resets my nervous system, preps me for bed, and I can get restful sleep to be able to hit it hard again the next day.
Yeah, man, you're really living a life that you love, and that's awesome. That because a lot of people are trying to skip past that period of the day, which is it's funny that that's the stuff that excites you. One thing I always love to ask people is, what's something that you spent a lot of time on that you think me or my audience should just skip entirely? And that could be
Um,
mental or physical.
Something I spent a lot of time with was, indoor entertainment is something where I spent much of my 20s doing, going to bars and going to movie theaters and concerts and tuning in. I spent a lot of time tuning in instead of creating and like, instead of playing the game, I'm in the game. I'm in the
Mm.
mountains every day now. I'm in nature. So I wish that I knew how much nature allowed us to thrive and how healing nature is, and that I didn't really have great access to it in Syracuse, New York. I mean, I had to go to the Adirondacks for the kind of nature that I have here in Colorado. Now it's our
Yeah.
backyard, but I really feel like that is something, multitasking without multitasking. You're getting the benefits of nature, the sun. You're generally moving when you're outside instead of sitting. Um, and it's going to help with your circadian rhythm, grounding. There's just all of these compounding benefits that you'll get from being in nature as opposed to being doing things for indoor entertainment. And I'm not saying don't go to restaurants and don't go indoors, but just be thoughtful of, are you getting outside? Because getting outside is so instrumental in us thriving as human beings. I mean, this is our DNA. We created all of these, indoor entertainment options. And obviously, a lot of it, having a house is nice. Like, do I want to sleep outside at night and make a fire? No, I like having a nice house. But, to some degree, I feel like we've been a victim of our success in that we created too much comfort and too many things that are indoor that take us away from being outdoors where we really thrive.
You're so right, man. I mean, you saying that like no one is outside enough, regardless of what you do, and I think it's important. One thing I spoke with Mark Sisson about, like what his idea of the modern day cigarette is, like sitting, for example. What
Mhm.
would you say from the people that you surround yourself with and the kind of environment that you're in? What would you say is the modern day cigarette or something that people should just be more conscious and avoid?
I mean, alcohol for sure. I really feel like over the next 10 or 15 years that alcohol will have a similar perception to cigarettes. I see more and more people within my friend group in their 20s
Yeah.
when I was still partying like a rock star. Like they're not partying like a rock star. They're mountain biking with me and they're building businesses and they're outside and they found all of these things that I found in my 30s and their 20s. So I see it happening now, but I think that's a big one. I mean, it's just so poisonous and thinking of it like a snowball effect. You have 6 drinks, you go to bed at midnight, you have pizza, after having the 6 drinks because you crave carbs, you
Yeah.
get a shitty night of sleep, 5, 6 hours of sleep. The next day, it screws up your energy and mental clarity. You don't hit a workout, you're not productive, you lay on the couch all day. It's just the snowball effect in the wrong direction where exercise and eating healthy and doing a sauna and cold plunge session, which I would argue the feeling is even better after doing that than it is consuming a lot of alcohol. But you have the snowball effect in the right direction. You get the state change. Like I get state change. Like I want to feel good all the
Yeah.
time. So I do all of these things for that state change. But I want state changes with no consequences. I don't want a hangover. I don't want shitty sleep. I don't want it to affect my mental clarity and energy levels. So that's why I do so many of the things I do is I found these ways to get that state change, but there's no consequences associated with it.
Yeah, I think that the no consequences is so important. And I think of like when you were in the Ironman phase, it was like it got to a point where it was too much. Like you were working your body way, way too much. And I think for a lot of period of time, you did it for a good amount of years, but even for a lot of people, they do it for even longer. How have you been able to not push yourself to the point where it becomes unhealthy? Because sometimes fitness to a point, if you're doing it for so long or in such an unhealthy way where it's all you do, that can be unhealthy as well. So how do you not go to extremes with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would argue right now I'm to an extreme with CrossFit. Like I'm doing
Yeah.
too much weightlifting, I'm doing too much anaerobic conditioning, and I'm feeling it. I want to get to the CrossFit Games, so while I'm so close, and I don't feel like I'm riding that line of injury, but I
Mhm.
definitely am overtraining in one capacity, and I know that, I recognize that, and I know that it's not sustainable for a long period of time. And the Ironman years taught me that too, where it got to a point where it just wasn't going to be sustainable. It was too much. It hurt to go up and down stairs. I was only sitting at high tops because my lower back was bothering me so much. I wasn't booking flights because it sucked to sit on a plane.
Jeez.
My lower backs and hips were just always so tight from it. So, yeah, I often, uh, I I caution people not to get addicted to doing this for long periods of time. It's a lot better to do, 60 minutes of training, today strength training and aerobic conditioning, and the next day 45 minutes of, some kind of aerobic training outside, and just kind of go back and forth between those two things. That's probably the best way to just look fit, be fit, have the energy, have the mental clarity. And I do more than that now, again, because I'm looking to compete in the CrossFit Games, but just being cognizant of, am I overdoing it and am I using this exercise just to fuel this high that I get from it, and
Yeah.
but I'm pounding myself into the ground. My cortisol levels are high. Endurance sports are notorious for reducing testosterone levels because of the overtraining. So just recognizing those things. Honestly, sauna and cold exposure was a huge find for me, where I didn't feel like I had to do that third workout in the day. I could do my strength training in the morning, some aerobic conditioning in the afternoon, and then I could do my recovery routine. And I got that similar high from the recovery routine, but it was also rejuvenating my body. So I wasn't pounding myself into the ground more and more.
Yeah, it's a great habit to build. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. There's one last question I ask every guest. My question for you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
Ooh, what belief am I currently unlearning? I mean, the big one for me is I'm obsessed with progression, and I feel like I always have to be doing something, progressing in something, as opposed to like just being grateful and happy for what I have right now. Do I need more? Probably not. I could just be very content with what I have at the moment. So I'm trying to unlearn that I have to keep, progressing and advancing and building, and just being grateful for like what I have now, and just being grateful for the moment, just being. Like being doesn't mean progressing. I can just be, and I can be happy just like surviving on this earth, looking out at this view right now.
Yeah, every single one of us struggles with that, man. I love it. All your links and everything will be in the show notes, but is there anywhere you'd like to direct people?
Instagram is best. Just my name, Eric Hinman.